Okay, well, let's begin. Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar by Eden on the French crypto framework. The objective of this webinar is to present how France is doing with regards to the crypto assets and how one could build or not build. We'll discuss this all together. Crypto-based activities in general. So we'll try to be very broad in our approach. We'll cover the general context of entrepreneurship in France and, of course, the specificities of the crypto assets rules. And we'll have a few different guests tonight, starting with Valeria Formation, to which I will give the floor very, very soon. But first and foremost, I would like to welcome all of you, and without further ado, let's dive into the program of the evening. First, a word on the Eden. So the Eden is an industry body that brings together digital assets, crypto assets companies in France. Our member have all the activities, operates all the activities related to the crypto assets, including market activities, protocols, data, etc., etc. We have more than 50 members, and we are quite a new organization because we were born this year. We do a lot of work to help everyone from the public sector to the private sector to better understand the crypto assets in general and develop the industry in France, of course, but also at the European level. So, of course, this webinar is completely in line with our mission, and we will try to give a great overview of what we think is the crypto assets market in France today. So on the next slide, and a small announcement, we have a new website, so feel free to go and see. Everything is not translated in English yet, but there's an English version, so feel free to go and have a look. And that's on this website that we will publish, of course, the report of this evening, the slides, and an article that will cover everything about the regulatory regime in France after this presentation. So for tonight, we will begin with an opening by Madame Valeria Formation. Members of the parliament. She will give us her vision of the crypto market and how everything is building in France regarding this specific market. And then we'll do introductory keynote with our own vision at Eden of the French crypto assets market. That will be followed by a roundtable with guests on the same subject, of course. We'll have a look at what's to be improved in France, and then switch to the EU level with two guests also to discuss comparative analysis and the next steps. Then conclude, and then a Q&A. So just for the organization, you can send messages to us in the chat. You can ask questions also. There's a Q&A section, and feel free to ask questions, written questions. You can ask to talk. You can raise your hand if you want to talk. So feel free to use all those options during the presentation. We will try to be reactive, and we'll put a few slots for Q&A during the presentation. So yeah, feel free to raise your hand or to ask your questions in the interface. So let's begin, and let's begin first with the introductory note by Valeria Formation.
Thank you, Simon. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm deeply honored today to open in this event about the French crypto framework. First, I would like to share with you a bit about my experience. Some of you may know the reason why I ran for the election in 2017, and for those who doesn't know, it's because I am still convinced by the message of our president and his project, the project to transform our country and to adapt it to current and future challenges of our world. This ambitious project requests the modernization of French economic frameworks in order to allow all our citizens, from wherever they come from, to build their projects and the chance to succeed. And the act called Pact was the first step of this project. Among the many advances of this act, one of them is linked by crypto. Indeed, France can't see the trend of crypto and does nothing or keep her old reflex to be against. It's my point of view, and I have tried to share it in my report about blockchain under Parliamentary Office for Scientific and Technological Assessment. So the government and the majority has understood that it is necessary to support the movement by building it a framework rather than prohibiting it. By the Pact Act, we have now in France a secure and a legal framework because it was essential for us to create the context of soft law to set up an ecosystem with transparency, security, and access to the banking system. Now we can see through the rules in force thanks to the transparent supervision and complete information to have about this subject. And by a supervisory framework, it's possible to separate the reliable transformation from the So, thanks to this law, French investors will have more protections. Our country can also attract legitimate projects and fundraising will increase. Also, the development of crypto in France can't progress without thinking about French blockchain's evolution. This innovative way to store and to spread data give for crypto a transparent and certificate framework to financial transactions. We can say that we have made a big step forward, but we still have a long way to do. We must take advantage of this technological revolution. With this goal, we will continue our reforms to improve crypto and blockchain framework. Indeed, crypto and blockchain accelerate the digitalization of our economic activities and our tools to financing the economy. Also, I would like to tell you that despite the latest statements from Minister of Economy, we believe more than ever in the opportunities offered by this technology. And I want to state that it's wrong to mitigate crypto and terrorism. Moreover, our current work on the KYC regulation will delete dupes. The KYC regulation will allow us to increase the security level of the identifications without weighing down the system. Crypto and blockchain have a bright future, and it's time to be aware of it by acts. Let me assure you that parliamentary believe in France, pro-technology, and we care about that. That's why I think this event this evening is a very good initiative, and I would like to thank Aidan to be giving me the chance to speak and for the organization of this event, which stakeholders of high quality will speak. I wish a great conference and thank you all for listening to me and my bad English language.
Thank you very much, Valeria. I think it was great. And thank you for the reassuring messages that you sent. And I think the uplifting message, it's true that crypto assets have a great future. And we are very happy to have MPs like you and Pierre, who will talk later, to defend us and to help the industry grow in France. So thank you very much again. Now we will, of course, go into the details of the French framework, because that's what the whole introduction, the whole meeting is about, right? So how to build a crypto company in France. And first, I will begin by the general context. And the general context is basically how do you create, is it easy, and how do you create a business in France in general? So first, it's important to say that during the last years, there has been a lot of evolution in France. Has become a country which is much more open to innovation and much more open to startups and to new companies. It has even become some kind of a meme, like the startup nation, an expression used by the French president to designate indeed France, but it was used to describe the new way of thinking that he wants to bring forward in France, an entrepreneurship mindset that already produced, I think, a lot of effects, and that's something very interesting. And here I just wanted to highlight a few key advantages of France, things that are going well with the startup nation. So the first thing is that there's a lot of very positive messages regarding innovation and entrepreneurship, which is, I think, very important for the general environment, and that helps a lot the entrepreneurs to find the good interlocutors, etc., etc. There's actual investments from the states and public agencies to help the entrepreneurs, either by direct financing, loans, helps for reduced tax, etc., etc. So if you create a company in France, you can find a lot of help from different levels of the state and of the local communities. There's also the support from the state towards entrepreneurship-focused organizations, so private organizations like La French Tech, France FinTech, etc. So there's huge help from the state, so those organizations can be more efficient and can bring more value to the entrepreneurs. There's a modernized infrastructure, and that's true. It's not something that France is known for, but there's been a lot of improvements in the way the companies are created. Everything's happening more or less online. The creation cost of companies has been reduced drastically in the last few years. So it's now easier than ever to create a French company. It's not the easiest in the world, but it's still much better than a lot of other jurisdictions. So I think it's important to say it. There's a low corporate tax rate that is planned in 2022, and significant tax credits for research and development activities. So that's interesting for innovative companies. There's excellence in financial and computer science expertise. So it's quite there's a lot of resources in developers and in financial expertise, which is quite interesting in the crypto space, of course. So you can find good profiles to staff your company. You have access, of course, to the whole EU market, which is a huge advantage that is shared by all the other EU countries. But of course, France is one of these gateways. There's growing VC investments, not completely in par with a lot of other geographical zones, but it's growing, and it's important to say. And maybe something that is sometimes a bit dismissed, but there's a lot of legal and regulatory clarity. You have obligations, but you know exactly what they are, and it's very clear in the law what you're supposed to do. So, and that's something that also the Pact law brought, and we'll get back to this later. So that's for the good sides, but it's also important to talk about the less good side of the startup nations. And I think one of the most significant blockers is that, yeah, French speaking is still pretty much required. If you want to create really a business in France, you have to have someone who speaks French in your company, or else you will have a lot of troubles. So that's still a blocker. There's quite of a risk-adverse culture in general. So there's a lot of initiatives from the government I talked about, but still the VCs have more risk-adverse investment thesis and less capital to distribute than in other countries. And that's also a replicate on the individual level. So individuals and companies are in general less literate on finance and have more risk-adverse strategies compared to other jurisdictions. So that may be, of course, something that is not very positive in the context of the crypto activities, even though there's quite a lot of people in France interested by the crypto space. There's a tendency to change the rules very quickly. So there's rules, that's good, they're clear, but then they can change, and they will change. And one of good example, I'm doing a bit of a spoiler now, but the Pact law will already change. Like a year after it's entering into force, it's already changing. So yeah, things change, and you have to keep up to date with the last rules. There's Brexit-related uncertainties, of course, with access to the Brexit to the UK market, which is quite an interesting market on the crypto space. But it goes both ways, of course, and it's also an issue in the UK and in the other EU countries. So that's more of a broad issue. And maybe that's also important to say, there's a costly and complex social security regime in France. France is the country that spends the most worldwide on social security, which is great for the health of everyone, but then it's costly, and there's a lot of different levels. So basically, you will need help to figure out how to use this social security regime, and that's something that can be a bit complicated for new companies. But apart from those things, I think the environment is good in general for entrepreneurs in France. If you want to address the European market, it's definitely a place to consider. And there's a local market, of course, that is significant. And that's where I will go more into the details with the framework for crypto assets activities. So France has a complete framework for crypto assets activities, both on the business and the legal and regulatory side. On the business side, there's a lot of crypto-related companies. So that's important to say. There's like 100 different companies in France that are operating, covering a really, really wide range of activities. So we have like 50 members at the end, and we have probably half of the probably less than half of the active companies in the space, with a few giants that are well known, like Ledger and Geico and Wharton, that are known outside of the French frontiers. But that means that you won't be alone, that there's already people that are building things in France. There's infrastructure for crypto projects, and that's of course a very good way of bootstrapping any kind of project. There's a few investors in the field. It's not the best point of France, let's say it frankly. But then we have this Eden, of course. We are good side of France, I hope. We bring a lot of leadership in the crypto asset space in France and in Europe. You have events in France. So of course we are doing this in the context of the Paris Blockchain Week, of which we are partners, but there's also the HCC, and those are really good events, high quality, with a lot of interesting talks. So this also brings a lot of presence of materiality of the blockchain space, crypto space in France. And there's a local market. The country is sufficiently big to have clients inside of the country. There's quite a few companies that are operating solely on the French market in France. So this means that there's a clientele, either a private clientele, and there's also a public clientele, because the state is really involved in a lot of different projects. So that's also very interesting, of course, to address this clientele. And now maybe let's switch to the legal and regulatory on the next slide. Oh no, first maybe the general context, and for now I will give the talk to Faustine.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for this great introduction. And now I think I will maybe try to explain how did we came to this crypto framework that Simon has just presented. It's because France has elevated crypto assets to kind of a strategic status since 2016. And on this, I don't know if I can say better fix than Mrs. Valéria Formation. On this topic, but yeah, since 4 years now, France and especially the government and our MEP put the crypto at the heart of the innovation policy agenda. We had several parliamentary missions on blockchain and crypto assets to sensibilize, to grow the knowledge and awareness of crypto among leaders and even the public audience. The Ministry of Economics and Finance developed its blockchain strategy a few years ago, and there was a great presentation of this blockchain strategy at the Paris Blockchain Conference, and that was not the only event, big event that was organized by the public authorities that focus on crypto and on what was doing on the crypto sector. Also, the blockchain task force that is organized regularly by the Ministry of Economics and Finance, and working on different topics and use case regarding blockchain, so not only crypto assets. So I think we can say now that our leaders, our public authorities are really know about crypto assets, really know what the crypto sector needs. And as Valéria Formation said, they really encourage the development of this sector. This is also supported by the regulators, the French regulators, that took a great attention on crypto since 2016. They created a fintech desk to gather the expertise and to have a look on the development of the sector. There was really at the beginning of the ICO movement, the unicorn program of the French financial regulator that aimed at helping token issuers in their project, and many other regulatory efforts by our regulators to implement a framework for crypto actors. And we will focus first on the pact law, because that's probably the main, if you heard about France and crypto, you probably heard about the pact law. You probably heard about the first ICO visa that was delivered in December 2019, and the first authorization for crypto asset service providers that was delivered in March 2020. So the pact law, what it is an ad hoc and hybrid regime for non-financial crypto assets. Why ad hoc? Because it's a bespoke regime that was created and that is dedicated to crypto assets that were newly defined by the French regulation. And the set of rules were really customized for crypto activities. Why hybrid? Because this regime includes both mandatory and optional components. So you have, for the crypto asset service providers, a mandatory registration when you provide crypto custody services or crypto fiat exchange services. Meaning that from the 18th of December, so that's recent, you won't be able to provide such services to French clients unless you are registered with the French regulators. But you have also other services that you can provide in France, but you don't need such registration. You can get an agreement with the regulator, but that's not meaning if you want to provide such services in France and you don't have this agreement, it's not prohibited. It's kind of having new guarantees, having like a comparative advantage, but it's not a mandatory regime. So for the moment, it refers to the crypto exchange service, the trading platform service, but they will be, as Simon said, soon under the registration scope, and many other services on crypto assets related to this secondary market. So here you can have the great landscape of the pact law with those optional and mandatory components that I just mentioned. But in details, what it means when you want to comply with the ICO visa, the registration, the license of CASP, and what are the rights that you benefit from when you are under the French legal framework. So I don't know if it's really useful to go into details, because as Simon said, there will be an article released tomorrow with better explanation of those components, and I think that we have great panelists on the roundtable also to give clarifications. So we were speaking about the regulatory framework for non-financial crypto assets, but France has also took some position and engagement towards security token markets, even if those crypto assets as their financial instruments are regulated under the EU financial regulation. So you had in 2016, 2017, 2 decrees that allow the use of DLT to issue, transfer, register some non-listed security tokens. So on the DLT, the IMF led several analyses to help project holders that wanted to implement some projects on security token. So an analysis of the financial regulation, how does it apply to such a security token on crypto derivatives, on trading platform, etc. And finally, those analyses led our French financial regulator to conclude that we do need what they call the EU Digital Lab to adjust this existing financial regulation to security token activities, because for the moment they are relevant stumbling blocks that prevent such project holders to develop their security token projects. So this EU Digital Lab inspired the European Commission's proposal for a pilot regime. I think Simon, Marina and Florian will maybe clarify such concept later, but this means that France had a great impetus for the EU financial regulation. Regarding taxation in France, it was a bit adapted to crypto assets. So really quickly for individuals, so you have a 30% flat tax on all capital gains that are realized, but there is no tax on crypto and pure crypto transactions. For companies, you don't have a specific tax regime. You are under the corporate tax traditional regime, I would say. But we had great works from our authorities, Autorité des normes comptables, especially in accounting, to try to give clarifications for ICO and token distribution mechanisms. So finally, we were speaking about the French regime, but we are going towards an EU regime. It's just that France a bit ran ahead the building of this regime by having this huge work for years. So what we could analyze with this new text that were released by the European Commission is that both the framework for crypto assets and the framework for security tokens were inspired from what has been conducted and analyzed in France. So we can say that we are quite ready for the implementation of this EU regime, even if it's if we have to wait some years. As a member state of the European Union, France has some advantages. It can benefit from passporting mechanisms and EU programs, so it can be really interesting if you want to implement your business in France. And finally, regarding the special question of the digital euro, France has already starting to experiment on this since the beginning of the year, and we know that now the European Central Bank is getting interest in this. So the French Central Bank has already, I think, some ideas to accelerate on those experimentation. So thank you very much. I hope I was good with the timing, and now I give the floor to our panelists for the first roundtable of this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Faustine. Yes, you were on time. It's entirely my fault. I was a bit too long. So thank you very much. I think unfortunately we don't have time for questions now, but feel free to draft some, and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. So let's jump directly in the first roundtable with Pierre Persson, which is a member of the French Parliament and the rapporteur of the Crypto Assets Report. Pierre, I think your camera is off, so could you please? Yeah, great. Welcome. And then we have Laurent Camus, which is a French FinTech Innovation Officer of the French Prudential Supervision and Resolution Authority, so ACPR. They are the regulators of one of the regulators, we'll go into the details after that, of the French crypto assets companies. And then Timothée Huret, who is Deputy Head of Savings and Financial Markets in the French Treasury of the Ministry of Finance. And he is expert on the crypto subjects in the ministry. So welcome, the three of you. We will go directly into the questions. Feel free to introduce a bit more on yourself if you want before answering the first question. We'd be very happy to learn more about what you are doing. And we'll start with a very broad question. which is how are the crypto assets viewed by your respective body, I would say. So let's start maybe with Pierre. What would you say that in general the Parliament sees, and you, your colleagues, see the crypto assets? Feel free if you want to answer in French to the question, and we can do a short translation afterwards.
Thank you very much for your invitation. I will try to do this in English. Maybe to be more accurate, I will switch in French after. I think, unfortunately, crypto assets remain relatively unknown to politicians. This is a very technical subject which require a good understanding to grasp the challenges we are facing. And as on many subjects, what we don't know very well scares us. This is true for politicians, and it's true also for public opinion. As such, what we attempt to remember about crypto assets is often money laundering, terrorism financing, deregulated currency, and consumption of energy. However, the government is committed to investing in innovation in order to build the future of the economy. At the National Assembly, several of us have been closely interested in the subject for several years now, and we are very involved because new technology will be one of the most important parameters in the conception of the labor market in 10 or 20 years. And it seems to be, to me, that crypto asset will play a major part in this future economy. Otherwise, we wouldn't currently have 80% of central banks worldwide working on the subject. It's up all of us here at our level to make the public authorities aware that crypto assets are an innovation with more opportunities than a danger or for the economy or the society.
Thank you very much. Your English was perfect. So
Okay.
Thank you. And maybe Laurent, how would you?
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Fine, thank you. So my name is Laurent Camus, and actually I belong to, I'm a FinTech Innovation Officer at ICPR. ICPR is the French regulator regarding the banking and insurance area, and also we are involved in crypto assets area alongside with AMF. So considering these questions, I would support very much the point related to innovation just mentioned. So I would say in a few words that crypto asset is a brand new kind of product or services which aims to contribute in the whole financial sector. And I mean, additionally to the traditional financial sectors. So of course, we don't have so far a deep insight on crypto assets because the crypto asset industry is quite new, and so much for the crypto asset regulation framework. Remember that Bitcoin was created only 11 years ago, so it's quite new. But crypto assets, whatever, it sounds promising because they should aim to provide or to support innovative financial use case. And for example, to streamline the existing financial processes or to improve access to the financial services. So in other words, I would say that crypto assets could help for better financial inclusions. And this could benefit either for individual customers, the SMEs or larger firms. So this is for the perspective, I would say, for the benefits of the crypto assets. But of course, as a financial supervisor, we will also ensure that any risk that could arise from this new industry should be tackled and mitigated, and in the same way or extent as for the other industries which are part of a traditional financial sector.
Thank you very much. I think it was really clear. And maybe Timothée.
Thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Excellent. Timothée, working for the Treasury, we are in charge of preparing national texts and also in charge of negotiating the regulations proposed by the Commission, MiCA and the pilot regime. So regarding your first question, Simon, and as mentioned by Pierre just before, it's clear that it can be sometimes a bit scary to deal with new topics, but we are very lucky to have MPs that are very dedicated to deal with such topics, and we are also lucky to have a minister who is clearly interested in this topic as well. So that could help us to build a dedicated framework in France. And the key idea is the fact that these people are deeply convinced that crypto assets have a great value, and blockchain technology as well, because it could radically transform a vast number of activities, financial, payments, also in the industry, clearly. And as Laurent already mentioned, it's clear that it can increase speed, fluidity, lower costs. That's all things that deserve to be studied at least. And if we can make our regulation evolve to deal with it, it's a good point. And that's exactly the reason why France already tried to tackle these issues, creating a framework for the use of blockchain technology in the financial sector. It's also a reason why we are trying to do the same at the EU level by supporting an experimental regime at the EU level. And that's also the reason why we worked, and with the help of the MPs, on a balanced approach for crypto assets and crypto asset service providers. That's because our MPs, our minister, and the governments are very convinced that it will bear fruits to enable entities to make use of these technologies.
I was mute. Thank you very much. It's interesting that you mentioned, of course, the regulatory regime that's put into place in France, and how it was all built, because that's something I want to touch upon a bit in details. So we've mentioned that there is this very specific regime that has been introduced by the Pact law, with a very new approach, novel approach of something that is partly mandatory and partly optional. So would any of you had maybe some elements of context of the objectives of those this specific regulatory framework? And that's a broad question that I have. If someone wants to answer this, what was, in a few words, the objective of this regime?
Maybe I can try to say some words on that. So I would say that in general way, the regulatory framework aims to provide protection for the consumers, the investors, and the competitors on the market. And to ensure this, we need a detailed classification of crypto asset services that could be delivered in order to identify and to set up ad hoc regulatory requirements to be requested for each crypto asset services. So you may understand that's not the same thing to provide custodian wallet services versus, for example, providing financial advices. And in other words, classifying crypto asset services help to put the right regulatory requirements when needed in terms of own fund or insurance, cybersecurity, claim management, EML safety, and so on. And this actually contribute, I would say, to put the right regulatory workload at the right place, and finally to offer a better protection for all. So when I say for all, it also means to favorize a better competition in the market between the crypto asset players, because the regulatory framework allows to ensure that the same rules are shared between the competitors. And this reduces the risk actually of unfair commercial behaviors, for example, and finally ensure a level playing field. So I would also mention that the regulations per se could be a competitive factor because it allows the regulated players to be more trusted. And this is prone, I think, to bring more business actually when confidence is, I think, a key selection criterion for potential clients. And finally, I will emphasize, and because this is a major point for supervisor, that the regulatory framework to be put in place at the time being would have to ensure to mitigate the EML safety risk. But I think I will develop this point later in the discussions.
Thank you very much. I think it's great. It gives a lot of context on the regulation. Yeah, Pierre, you want to add something?
Yeah, I'm very agree with Laurent. We have chosen to take a positive approach by encouraging companies to enter into the regulatory framework without forcing them to do so. I think it is the whole point of the visa issued by the Financial Market Authority, which allows companies to legitimize their activity with consumers as well as with a financial institution. And it's a fair trade, I think, for the state, the French state, and for the company. And this is particularly useful for facilitating the opening of bank accounts.
Yes, touchy subject, the opening of bank accounts. It's great that you mention it because it's still not 100% solved, but we are working towards it, and notably with the ACPR, and I'm sure we'll have a few words on this later.
Simon, if I can add something,
of course,
shortly. Since you ask about the objective of the regulation, I would say the first objective was to allow the use of the technology when it was not possible. And in many existing texts, it was not possible to use blockchain simply because we didn't imagine that blockchain would arise one day. So the first thing that was done in 2016 and confirmed after that was to use this technology in the trade and post-trade activities for financial instruments. This difficulty that we had in France, we now have it at the European level. So we have the same thing to do at the European level, allow the use of the blockchain technology. That's the purpose of the experimental approach proposed by the Commission. And that was for what I would say is traditional financial activities. But for the new objects that appeared with the blockchain, it was out of the scope. Clearly, it did not exist before. So we had to conceive something new because we think that it makes sense to have a regulation of these objects. We didn't want to kill the market. So that's the reason why the French approach was mostly optional when it was possible to be optional. It's not possible to be optional on everything, and on AML CFT, it's not reasonable to be optional, we think. But that's the sense of the visa and of the licensing by the AMF. It's being attractive. So if you want to have a good signal to the market, you can ask for this licensing of visa. If you don't want to because you are too small or not ready to do so, you can still work and conduct your activity in France.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's important to emphasize on this optionality of the regime. That was really an innovation, a regulatory innovation in France, and that was not entirely followed by the EU with the EU regulation, because we'll have something that is applied to mandatory to everyone. But I think it was a great inspiration. So. Thank you very much for your very complete answers. And maybe I have a more personal question for Pierre, because you are a big supporter of the development of this industry framework. And I was curious to know what were the drivers that made you yeah, choose this subject and push it forward compared to all the other subjects that you have to go with as MPs.
Yes, it's one of my subject. I think it's my favorite because it's my passion. I was interested in crypto long before being elected MP. I discovered Bitcoin around 2013, and understood quite quickly that that this innovation potentially represent a major upheaval for entire section of our economy. I spoke about it to friends and colleagues. Very few took me seriously at the time. However, for me, France could not remain a simple observer while such innovation was potentially restructuring our society. I therefore had to carry out a report on the question on behalf of the National Assembly. And in this context, I found colleagues just as passionate as me, motivated to make France a blockchain hub. And that's what we have tried to work on since about 3 years now. As part of writing this report, I met nearly 200 industry players who confirm my intuition. I think blockchain technology carries with it the seed of a revolution as important as I think the internet. This is why with my colleague, I have actively advocated for a flexible regulatory approach that promotes innovation while protecting investors.
Thank you very much. So I guess everything went quite well because the regime went through, and we have something that sends good signals to the industry in general. Of course, there's a few hiccups in the development and in the practice of these new regimes, because it's something completely new, and of course there's adjustments to be made either on the level of the companies but also on the level of the regulators, and that's maybe something that I want to delve a bit more on now. We already touched quite a lot on the general context of the regulation. I'm not sure we have covered maybe the practice of it, how it works. I don't know if maybe Timothée, if you want to say a few words to just give a bit more context on the French actual regime that is applied today.
I will keep it short because I saw the presentation made by Faustine just before, and it was very clear. The broadly speaking, to be simple regarding ICOs, we have a fully optional framework. If you want to, you can ask the AMF, the Autorité des marchés financiers, to deliver a visa for your project. Depending on 3 main conditions, the first one being registered or established in France. That's understandable. To have a process to ensure that you will be able to safeguard the funds that you raise during the ICO, and finally to have a minimum level of AML-CFT measures to ensure that you won't contribute to bad activities. That's simple. So at this stage, we already have 3 ICOs that have received this visa by the AMF, so it's a good starting point. That's for the primary markets, and on the secondary markets, we have 2 layers of regulation. The first one being compulsory. It's a mandatory registration of crypto asset service providers regarding AML-CFT. And the French framework will evolve in a few days to cover the vast majority of these crypto asset service providers, because again, we think that we cannot negotiate with these minimum standards regarding AML-CFT. But beyond this compulsory layer, you have again an optional layer. If you want to, you can, on optional basis, ask the AMF, donc l'Autorité des marchés financiers, to receive a license proving that you are a serious actor in the field, depending on different rules, which depends on your activities. But that's a clear way to prove that you are a good guy, to to keep it informal, on the market. That's a broad idea of the regime. But if you are interested in to have information, you can go to the website of the AMF, which is not represented tonight, but which has done a great job to clarify the regulation. And there is a Q&A regarding what can be done for ICOs and crypto asset service providers, which is very comprehensive. So you can make use of it.
Yes, I second this. The FAQ has been translated in English on a Q&A, so don't hesitate to read it. And we also have an article that will come out to this week very quickly on the website of ADAN that also gives a summary of the regulation. Thank you very much. And so we understand also from what you're saying that there's two regulators, and one of them is present today. And I wanted to ask, how does it work in practice to have two regulators? How is a file examined, and what's the role of the respective roles of the AMF and the ACPR in the process? Laurent.
So it's a very good question indeed. So actually it works very well in practice, and we collaborate all together on the application files that we have in common. And to make the things smoother for the applicant, the regulation defines a single entry point in France. And this is the AMF, Autorité des marchés financiers. So the AMF is in charge to process the application file with the applicant, crypto asset payer, and to initiate the dialogue with him in order to clarify the authorization process and to collect a minimum set of information in order to fulfill a primary file. And at this stage, then the AMF would assess the regulated financial services potentially involved regarding the operational model described by the applicant. And if these services appears to be ICO issuance or optional license crypto asset services, then the AMF would continue the authorization process on their own without action of ACPR. But otherwise, if mandatory registration crypto asset services are identified, then the ACPR would be involved in the process by the AMF, and the information will be shared between the two supervisors. So in general, the AMF remains responsible and conduct the overall authorization process and organize as soon as possible a kickoff meeting with all the relevant parties. So this means the AMF, of course, the ECPR when mandatory registration services, the representative of the applicant, and their legal advice, if any. And this first meeting is very important because it aims to get a comprehensive understanding of a business operation model, the arrangement with external providers, if any, to identify any payment services that could imply additional authorizations, and also to have an overview of the AML CFT systems. Against this background, I would say the ACPR would be responsible to qualify any payment services that might be involved, and also would make a deep assessment of the AML CFT framework. While the AMF would be in charge of all the other requirements, including the fit and proper, the own funds requirements, the IT and cyber security, and so on. So at this stage, there is some iteration rounds between the applicant and the supervisors in order to clarify any potential issues or to fulfill any missing information, and with the objective to get a comprehensive application file. And at the end of the authorization process, then the AMF would deliver the registrations upon their own assessment and also upon the approval of the ACPR regarding the EML CFT framework. And during this authorization process, that would take actually some months, there is a continuous dialogue between supervisors and between the supervisor and between the supervisor and the applicant in order to avoid any gap of information and any tunnel effect. And this helps, frankly speaking, to build a strong authorization process.
Thank you very much. And it's been, I guess it has been something quite unique for the AMF to work with the ICPR and vice versa on the same file. So this probably has been an interesting experience for you too, to put in place this kind of collaboration. And
actually, sorry, it's not a unique case because in the investment services, we have also a close collaboration between ECPR and the EMF. So we are very keen to work all together, actually.
Great. And so I understand from your answer that, of course, you are more specifically in charge of the whole KYC AML aspect. How was it for the ACPR to delve into such a new subject, for which the KYC AML measures could be a bit disconcerting, with new procedures, new fundamentals? Maybe you have a experience feedback on that.
Yes, maybe I can detail a little bit the requirements on this. So this is indeed a very important topic, EML CFT, as I said before, because EML CFT risks are effective in crypto asset area, and as mentioned, actually in different analysis conducted either national level, European level, or also international level. So, but what would be the key requirements regarding EML CFT? And first of all, I would like to highlight that the EML CFT framework is not specific actually to crypto asset service providers because it is derived from a general risk-based approach framework which apply to any financial regulated entities. So we don't have any specific rules to manage EML CFT for crypto asset service providers. This is an overall general framework. And this EML CFT framework is based traditionally on four principal pillars. And the first one to be assessed by ACPR would be an AML CFT systems to be provided and to be described by the applicant. And this one is typically comprised of tools, material, and human resources to operate the systems, a person who is responsible of a system, a proper classification of risk, this is very important, some procedures, training program, and training resource, and also an internal control to ensure that over time, the EML CFT system is efficient. So this is the first pillar of the framework. The second pillar is more process, customer due diligence process. So this is usually famous under the name KYC. So this is obvious that you need to identify your clients or the beneficial owners, and also to verify the collected identities. And also you have to tackle any specific case, like for the political exposed person that you should be able to manage. So this is the second pillar. The third pillar is the one related to set up a system to monitor your operations. So this is a very important one, because you should, as a provider, be capable to ensure the consistency between the operations and your knowledge that you have of your clients. And also you should be capable to detect any product or transactions which carry high risk of EML CFT, to detect any transaction particularly complex or an amount, for example, unusually high, which do not appear to have any economical justification or legal purpose. So this is the third pillar, monitoring systems. Fourth pillar So this is the one related to the suspicious activity reports, and this one involves the FEU. So the FEU means the Financial Investigation Unit in France. This is TRACFIN, and as such, if on your own analysis you have detected some suspicious case and you assess after your assessment this suspicious case remains suspicious, you are requested with no delay to report this activity, this suspicious activity to TRACFIN. And for this, you should rely on an FAU reporter in your entity and also an FAU correspondent. So this is the four main pillars that are expected to be delivered and assessed by CPR. Earlier, I mentioned a particular point. This is a point relative to the classification of risk. And this was important. This is a cornerstone because a risk-based approach is actually based on the classification of risk. So the classification of risk, you are expected to describe the risk on which the provider may be exposed, and you have to consider 5 different axes. And alongside the risk profile that you may identify, then you should describe appropriate measure in order to mitigate the risk. So I will not go too much in the detail, but you may know that there is an axis related to client, to product, to a transaction, to the distribution channel, and also to the geographical origin of funds, sorry. So maybe I could detail 2 of them because there's some little bit specificity related to crypto assets. So this is the general framework. We have the same for financial institutions, but there's some specificity related to crypto assets. So for example, on the axis client, at the time when you have to describe the axis client risk, you may ask the provider a question if you accept or if you are capable to detect clients which could use a Tor browser, for example, or clients that could use risky means of payments. Also, you may raise the questions if you are, as a provider, in capacity to score the crypto asset wallets provided by your clients. And for this, you may use some specific tools specific to blockchains, like KYT tools. This is blockchain analysis, and this helps to help the crypto asset service providers to tackle the AML/CFT risk regarding to these specificities. Regarding the ASIS products, you may ask the questions if you accept, for example, privacy coins in your transactions. So it's not forbidden in France to distribute or to trade privacy coins, but you may have to know that this may carry a higher risk in terms of AML/CFT. And if you choose to trade privacy coins, then you have to detail the measure that you are capable to set in place in order to mitigate the AML/CFT risk. And I have to say, as a supervisor, that privacy coins is not easy to tackle in terms of AML/CFT. So you have to be aware of that. And we would not recommend for crypto asset service providers to trade the privacy coins, because otherwise he would have to set up some AML/CFT measure that is very difficult to put in place, I would say. So just to conclude on that part, CPR would assess this whole AML/CFT framework regarding all these requirements and following a risk-based approach. And according to the assessment, the CPR would either validate the system or request to adapt the system of the providers in order to be compliant, in a few words.
Thank you very much. I think it was really comprehensive, and we have a very broad understanding of how KYC/AML procedures could work in a French environment with a risk-based approach that would apply to all the PSAN and the VASPs for which the registration is mandatory. So maybe just to do a bit of wrap up of this whole regulatory regime, and I will ask the question to Pierre, because he's probably more free of his words on this. What would be, after 1 year, a first appraisal of the regime? what do you think about the work that's been done, and maybe what's left to do? And then we'll see. We'll go to the EU after that.
It's a good question. Right now, and when we voted, the French regime for the crypto asset was one of the most complete legislation. We have addressed all the issues deemed relevant for the sector at the time of the reflection: taxation, accounting, bank account, ICOs. The big advantage of the French regime is that it has been a pioneer in Europe and has largely contributed to inspiring European regulation under construction for 2024. And companies that have chosen to work in France will therefore have an advantage on the European market because they will be ready on a legislative question and will be able to concentrate on their activity. However, innovation is as constant as quick, and the public authorities must therefore go faster and further on certain issues. We must in particular encourage the issuance of security token and take better account of decentralized finance players. There are concrete blockchain use cases that tend to develop rapidly in the short term, and will have to be focused during the upcoming months.
Thank you very much. Let's conclude this roundtable with maybe a question on the articulation between the future regulation and the French framework. Maybe Timothée, if you have first thoughts on that, because our understanding is that the EU regulation is very similar to the French one in its general approach, its broad approach with an ad hoc regime. How do you see the transition happening, and maybe if you have a few first thoughts on this?
Yes, you're right. There are many similar concepts in MiCA, which is the ad hoc regulation, the bespoke regime, European regime for crypto assets. And the fact that there are so many similarities is a good point. And as mentioned by Pierre Persson just before, it's good for French actors because that they won't be necessarily lost if the proposed text remain as it stands. The major difference being the fact that the EU regime would be compulsory, fully compulsory, not only regarding AML CFT, but also regarding investor protection. That's clearly another approach. We decided to have something optional because it's France, because we have to be attractive. And it's complicated, and it would have been premature to do something compulsory at our national level. The question can be asked at the EU level, because when you have the access to the whole EU market with a passporting regime, it's possible to have something compulsory in mind. But you have, and we have, to make sure that this regime would be proportionate, because all entities are not the big players that we can see on the market. So that's a key point for the negotiation, to ensure that we will be able to deal with the entities in a proportionate manner. Regarding the pilot regime, this time it's focusing on financial instruments. We are very pleased to see that the EU Commission decided to follow our idea. France was not the only country to support it, but the philosophy of an experimental approach is key in this field, because it would be very complicated to draft something new within the European text now, because we still don't know what we can do, and if we want to do something consistent, we have to have more information, data, and to see what business models can emerge from an experimental approach. So that's a good philosophy that we clearly support and that we will keep supporting during the negotiations. However, it's clear that the experimental approach is maybe a bit restrictive regarding the entities that can enter the scope of the experimentation. Regarding the scope itself, we want to be sure that we will have an experimentation that will give information. And we want information regarding several kinds of entities, several kinds of technologies. It should be on several kinds of blockchain, not necessarily private blockchain, but also public blockchain. Pierre Persson mentioned the need to bear in mind the phenomenon of decentralized models. So that's something that should also be studied within the experimentation. So that's the key points for us in the negotiations that are coming. It's to be sure that this experimental approach will be broad enough to have enough information and to be able in a few years to draft something at the EU level that will be consistent with the technology.
Thank you very much. That's of course that's something we are very keen to support too, and that's something we will go back in a few minutes with the EU panel. I think that was very clear. So I think we can wrap up the roundtable now and maybe take a few questions from the attendants. If you have still a few minutes, I know it was supposed to finish now, but if you have a few minutes left, we can maybe take one or two questions. We already have 2 written questions in the chat, so maybe there's one that's more on this panel, and that's about passporting for crypto businesses. So the passporting for a business that is regulated, for example, in Germany as a crypto custodian. How would it work if the company wants to operate with French clients or in France? Maybe now and then in the prospective EU regime. I don't know who wants to take the question.
Maybe I can try to answer that. So there is no passporting regime because there is no common EU text regarding crypto asset service providers. There is a common text regarding AML CFT, but there is no passporting regime within this framework. So what we have right now, if you are a German company willing to target French customers, you have to register as well as the French entities. But the ACPR and AMF will look if you if you are already covered elsewhere to avoid too many redundant controls. But yes, in theory, you should be registered as well in France, only regarding AML CFT measures, because as we already said, the rest of the framework is optional. So you won't have to register for something that's purely optional. The best way to deal with the issue of passporting is obviously to have a common European approach, and that's the idea of the MiCA text, and that's also the idea that should be put in the coming European text regarding AML CFT, a new regulation.
Thank you very much. We have a question about the rumored prospective change in the KYC measures. I'm not sure you can answer anything on this tonight, but maybe give a timeline, or I don't know to which extent you can just touch on this subject tonight. feel free to.
I can only confirm that it will happen. That's clear, and before the end of the year. Yeah.
Okay, so just to clarify for those who are not informed, so there's a change in the KYC AML and notably dispositions, and notably the occasional regime that allowed companies to provide for some cryptocurrency exchanges without doing proper client identification will be removed in effect. So yeah, that's something that will happen, but we'll have more details before the end of the year, if I understand correctly. Thank you very much. I think we will just jump on the slide we had on what we thought was to be improved in the regime as Aiden, and if you want to react to what we will say in those slides as panel participants, please feel free to do so. It would be great to have your reactions. It's nothing spectacular, but really just a presentation of what we had in mind as improvements on the text. Yeah. So yes. So the idea was basically what's missing, what's the remaining issues in the French crypto assets framework today, and the two first ones. It's not really related to the regulatory regime. It's more of a general acceptance and knowledge on the crypto assets field, and that's something that is not specific to France. But it has to be said that France is not particularly in advance in this specific field, and this is really the general insights regarding crypto assets. So the general public perception, but more specifically the elite perception of the crypto asset is not good in France, and we have a few examples of people who are dismissive of Bitcoin or crypto assets in general without having really delved into the subject, considering that it's a Ponzi scheme, etc., etc. So it's not really new. If you are into the crypto assets industry, you know that there's a lot of people who have these who shares those opinions, but it has to be said that of course it's the case also in France, and that's one of the missions we have at the end, to improve the situation, to disseminate knowledge, to educate on the subject, to help everyone understand the interests of those assets and the context on which they can have interest, of course, because that's important too. A second point, and that's I think an important one, is the access to bank accounts. It's still an issue in France, so it's a very operational issue. When you open a company in France related to crypto assets, you will have a hard time opening a bank account. That's a fact, and that's something that you should be aware of if you are contemplating opening a company in France. Most of the VASPs that are operating in France, they have their main bank account, their operating bank account outside of France. That's like mandatory, because no French bank will accept them. And that's something we've been, of course, working on. And maybe Laurent, if you want to mention the group that we have, because that's something that I think is positive for the development of the industry.
So yes, exactly. This is an important point. And the initial idea with BUIDLing was that crypto asset service provider regulated, registered, should have a better access to banking account and service accounts. So this was the initial idea, but it appears that's not exactly translated in these terms. So I understand the point, but the issue is still persistent today. And that's why we have created at the national side a working group to tackle the issues. And we have actually a forum FinTech. This is a forum animated both by the two regulators, ACPR and EMF, and which we can tackle any potential issue that can arise across the financial sectors. And as such, we have started to create a working group in order to tackle the issues related to limited access to bank accounts, but also payment services. So this is also involved in the area. And in this working group, so this is an ongoing working group, so I can't disclose too much the information because the discussions are still ongoing. So the idea is that we want to furtherize the discussion between representatives of both industries, the industries related to the financial institution and the representative from the crypto asset industry. So the first rounds of discussions are quite good, and the discussions are still ongoing. So we aim to deliver a report, I would say, in the beginning of the next year, so in order to make coming out about what are the main points that could be takers in order to help the respective industries to better understand themselves and maybe to set up some appropriate guidelines. We know. So we stay focused on this topic, and we will publish something as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. So that was one of the most important points. There's, of course, the difficulty of French actors to access to sales promotion channels. So that's something that is very practical also. And there's efforts, of course, that are done in this specific approach. But main marketing channels, which is online, the GAFA, basically, they don't recognize the French regulation yet. So they recognize the BIT license in New York, they recognize a few other regulations, but they don't consider the French VASP regulation as being sufficient to access the sales promotion channels. And they have very strict rules regarding those promotion channels for crypto assets. So that's a bit of a blocker now, and we are working also to unblock this. It's a bit of work because interlocutors are very hard to find in the GAFA. But yeah, that's something that you have to have in mind also. And the last but not least, and that's of course linked to the relatively novelty of the regime, but there's not a lot of legal certainty, and the stability of the regulatory framework is not assured. And that's, of course, particularly the case with the future EU regulation that will basically change everything. So there's rules that are temporary, but maybe what we can say is that probably in practice, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but probably in practice, the rules should not change that much for regulated entities such as market participants, operators. They will have additional operational obligations, but for example, for the KYC AML procedures, what they have put in place, if they are under the supervision of the ACPR, should normally be considered sufficient under the EU regime, except for any additional specific rules that would be put in place, of course. So that's it for maybe what's to be improved for the French sector. Maybe we can wrap up the roundtable now. Thank you very much for your participation, Pierre, Timothée, and Laurent. It was very interesting, I think, for all the participants. And I'll keep the few questions we have in addition for the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Interesting.
So let's go to the last section of this of tonight's presentation with Marina and Florian, that I am very happy to welcome to this webinar. Hi Marina, hi Florian.
Hello.
Hello, hi.
So welcome, and let's go immediately in the last roundtable together. We'll just do a very short presentation of both of you, and feel free to complete with anything that I would have missed. So Marina is, oh, and we did the typo on your name. I'm really sorry. We will change that. Marina is a board member of the Blockchain Think Tank Slovenia Association. So it's a think tank that provides with ideas on the crypto asset sector in Slovenia, and she works. She's been involved in the field for quite a long time, and she has a legal expertise. Florian Glatz is the president of the German Blockchain Association. He's also involved with a lot of other projects, so I won't list all of them. He's a lawyer, and we are working together to address the whole EU crypto framework that is ongoing. I'm very happy to have them in this chat. It's more a chat than a roundtable because I won't really be a moderator here. We will discuss together, and let's maybe begin directly with a comparative approach. So let's ask ourselves a simple question. You've had a broad presentation of the French regime. What are your reactions to that? What are the key differences that you would that you see with what you are faced with in your respective countries? And maybe we can start with Marina.
Thank you very much, Simon. Yes, this was a very good presentation, and I think you have done a lot of work in France in order to actually secure an interesting framework for the blockchain companies that are joining your country. So what we have been doing is actually talking to the regulator and trying to present them with what's going on in the industry and what's going on in our state. What was interesting is that we started quite early, so it's like a 3-4 year old organization, because blockchain has started early here. So you probably know Bitstamp with quite a famous platform. So because it is a small country, there's a lot of people that already knew about blockchain very early, and also early adopters. So we had to talk to the regulators, and they were also very responsive, very willing to talk to us and issuing guidance, and especially on crypto assets. We have been involved in the process of AML KYC implementation, then talking to the tax regulator. I think this is very important because, of course, again, there's a lot of people that hold crypto assets. By the recent report of the European Central Bank, actually, we have seen that 5% of all the citizens are holding crypto assets, which is quite important. So these rules need to be clear for everyone. And I think we have achieved quite an interesting result, but unfortunately, we don't have a framework for crypto assets right now in our state. So I think that in the long run, when this MiCA regime and the pilot regime were going to be implemented, is going to be quite good for this ecosystem, because it will bring more legal certainty. And the last thing is that we're looking forward to the presidency of Slovenia in the second part of the next year. So Slovenia is going to hold the presidency of the Council of the European Union, and I believe that this is also going to be a crucial time in this MiCA and MiCA development. So this is very shortly what we have been doing in the last years.
Thank you very much. How about Germany, Florian?
Yeah, so I guess France and Germany are two of the important players in Europe. They are the home to big ecosystems in terms of companies building innovative things. And unlike France, Germany did not engage in setting up a system for accommodating certain kinds of, let's call it ICOs or something else, like a voluntary opt-in national system for getting regulated when you think there is a strategic value to that as a company. So Germany has not gone down that route. It was done by France, it was done by Malta, and maybe a few others. Germany, on the other hand, so around 2018, when maybe in France the effort started to get this law done, the German BaFin just released an official statement explaining how you can find out whether your token is regulated by MiFID II or not. And if you're not regulated by MiFID II, then we don't want to hear from you, in a sense, right? And the problem still there was, however, taxes. So even if you're doing it in Germany and you're not a MiFID II instrument, there would still be incredible insecurities around the tax situation for these projects. Similar also for just private persons doing sales and making gains with crypto assets, as it is probably right now with good prices on the market in Germany. There are very foundational issues how the tax code actually deals with crypto assets. It's unresolved. Similar to, or the German project, if it wasn't going for this opt-in regime for non-MiFID II crypto assets, was actually to take another, let's say, low-hanging fruit of regulatory approaches on the national level that you can do. And they came up with a draft law, it's still in draft stage, for implementing tokenized securities in the national civil code system. So this sounds a bit technical, but it was a surprise for many people actually when they looked at MiCA, so this European proposal that just came out, why it doesn't regulate all of these things. Like people were saying, hey, you know, MiCA is not as innovative as, let's say, the Liechtenstein blockchain law, which also became very famous. But Liechtenstein did the same as Germany. They took the same low-hanging fruit in a sense, which is implement blockchain assets, crypto assets, into the civil code of your local jurisdiction. And this is nothing that the EU can do in principle in the same way. And so this is the same thing Germany did. They did it so way narrower than what Liechtenstein did. They have a much broader approach of what they integrate there into their civil code. In Germany, it's only about the electronic securities. It's an interesting law because just legally speaking for the lawyers, actually it's hard to explain to French lawyers, maybe, I'm not sure, but because we have some differences in the civil code, but in terms like this electronic law on securities basically says that a token on a blockchain, if it's a digital security, has the exact same legal status as a physical object. That sounds bizarre, but this is actually what's in the law, and it has amazing ramifications way beyond financial applications, even because it gives you suddenly property law for pure data, which is interesting. Another thing I guess we can be proud of in Germany is that we convinced, by we I mean this German Blockchain Association that I co-founded and I'm still the president of today. It's a national blockchain strategy for Germany, and the government released it in September 2019, and then a lot of things followed from that. And the third thing I want to mention here, and it's not like we have a million great things about blockchain in Germany, but this is maybe the last one, is that we have a digital identity program where the government sponsors and helps in many ways, a bunch of projects around digital identity, including or very much focused on actually self-sovereign identity concepts. And we've already approached them and said, you know, make the connection also between financial market applications and regulations and the digital identity innovation you're building there. Because if you want to be more strict on enforcing rules in the financial market, you should have a concept of making identity just a super, you know, really nice experience. And so you know, you ID once and then you can invest everywhere, and then nobody cares that you have to ID to invest everywhere, in a sense, right? It's kind of illogical. And so do we see really some movement forward there? And it's actually was said that Angela Merkel herself just a few weeks ago said digital identity is the top priority going forward. I don't know, but there's a lot of digital identity stuff now going on. So yeah, that's Germany.
Excellent. I think it was very interesting, and it's true that the digital identity subject is very popular right now. We have, I think, in France, we had a parliamentary report on digital identity in France, which has a very different context, I think, from Germany in this regard, because it's very state-focused, with a lot of blockers regarding you know, management of personal data, and of course there's a lot of things to solve before being able to implement this kind of digital identities. But it's really extremely interesting because, of course, blockchain is the public blockchain specifically are one of the best infrastructure to develop those kind of use cases. So it's good to know that there's also progress made in Germany and in other European countries. Would you say, I would just want to react very quickly. Would you say that the law, the civil law that you mentioned is because I don't know about the Liechtenstein law, but is it similar to what Switzerland puts in practice, or is it completely different?
Now, Liechtenstein, Switzerland, or Switzerland, Germany?
Switzerland, Germany.
I think there is a similarity in that they are bridging this gap. But it's different for every jurisdiction how they decide to bridge the gap. It's really a creative challenge, and every national jurisdiction has its own peculiarities, you can call it like that. Because in Germany, we literally have to make these digital securities physical things, equivalent to physical things for the system to work. It's like a hot fix or whatever you call it. It's a patch, as you call it in software. And everybody has to patch it differently, because at least the law on securities in Germany in the civil code, it's as old as the civil code. It's from the entered into force on 1st of January 1900. So it's just literally very old.
Okay, I see how it is different from France, because France has completely digitized all the securities. Like 20 years ago, I think there was a huge reform in this, and earlier than that, Faustin said. But Faustin is the expert in securities. I'm not the expert. If you want to intervene, Faustin, please do. So there were not these specific subjects, but then what's interesting is that in France, crypto assets, so not securities, but crypto assets in general, before having this really ad hoc regime, they were analyzed as goods, like like a chair or something, anything really like an object. And this is so the tax regime was the tax regime of if you sell a computer. That was really interesting, because that's how the law applying to goods in France was because that's, if you don't fit into any category, then you are into the general goods. I don't know if it's the same maybe in Slovenia, if you have any experience in that, or in Germany, but that was something that was interesting for us.
Yeah, I think that Slovenia is more like Slovenia now is similar to the Austrian one. So here I see a lot of similarities with what Florian was actually saying in the theory code. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So maybe you already touched the subject, Florian, with the evolution of the regime. So there's, if I understand correctly, that there's this draft regulation, and I guess for the market participants, there's this. There's no specific regime for the crypto assets industry, and there's none in preparation because I guess now Germany will wait for the EU regulation. Is it the same thing in Slovenia, Marina?
Yeah, I can say that maybe we're working together because we're in this trio for the presidency. So Germany right now, and then Portugal, and then Slovenia. So yes, I think that our regulators are now very actively responding and giving feedback to what's been drafted, and they're really looking forward because what they have been doing till now was really trying to issue as opinions for the clarification of especially crypto assets. So I think that they're welcoming this, and just like I think this week there was one of the regulator on the national TV saying that this is going to be regulated very soon, and they're looking forward to that.
Great. So let's jump on the very shortly on MiCA and the pilot regime. That's not the subject today, but I think it's the future of the regulation, and we have to address it, and notably the issues that we've seen. So very broadly, I think we all agree, and that's why we are working together on the main issues. But how can we just summarize very broadly how the regime will work? I think the first thing we can say is that it's basically ad hoc regime, mandatory for every single entity that operates in the market, and that it has a very broad approach that tries to cover every single asset, every single blockchain asset, including securities, but on a different scale. And then there's a huge topic and a huge focus on stablecoins. That is like a third of the regulations is on stablecoins. Maybe if you have any reaction thing to add on this before maybe we'll present the initiative we've been conducting together. If you want to add something on the broad approach that I just presented.
I would just wanted to just mention something. Also, the report on the digital euro is actually mentioning stable coins and mentioning Libra or DN or something there. So I think this, as you were saying, it is a focus of this regulation.
Good, excellent. So maybe just to conclude this roundtable, we are working together with Florian and Marina, and I have already talked about this, but just to be very clear, we are launching a specific initiative because the objective, well, first of all, there's a few things in the text, the European text, that are probably problematic for a lot of different use cases of the blockchain industry, and specifically the decentralized use cases. So we want to make the industry, to be the voice of the industry at the EU level, and it's very complicated to do this work. So we will work all together to make sure that our messaging is aligned and that we push for regulations that make sense for the whole of Europe. So I'm very happy to work with Marina and Florian on a day-to-day basis now to create this EU CI, EU Crypto Initiative. And feel free to have a look at the website and to contact us if you want to join the initiative, because there's quite a few things where we need your help, notably on the general messaging and how on the practical side of things. So yeah, that was just a very short announcement. We'll do, of course, a lot of communication on this later, and feel free to ask also your questions on this initiative now. And maybe let's just, I don't know if you want to add something, Marina or Florian, in this, on this.
I think you captured it really well, and indeed, it's I think a super important initiative, and everybody who feels affected by MiCA or knows somebody who is should get in touch.
I would just add that is very timing is very important. So this is why we are also doing this initiative, to understand where and when to actually give feedback on what's happening on the draft. So yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much to both of you. Let's wrap up this webinar. I think a very short conclusion is that we are all waiting for the EU regulation, and we will want to make sure that this regulation that will basically replace all the current regulatory regime will be completely in line with the expectations of the industry. So France, I would say, is a good place to start a crypto business compared to the other European countries. It's great that the French regime has inspired the draft regulation in Europe. So there's quite a few bridges to be created between the French and the EU regime. There's still a few things missing in France, and of course we are working towards filling those gaps. And if you want more information on the French regime, but also on the EU initiative that we are launching, feel free to to contact us directly at EDEN, and for the EUCI, there's a dedicated website, but you can also, of course, contact Florian or Marina. And maybe let's just finish by answering, if we can, a few questions that we've had. Thank you very much for your attention. And let's delve into the questions. So we have, how many time do we have? Like 10 minutes. Let's do it for 10 minutes. So one question we had is that, shall we understand that security token projects cannot be undertaken in France at this stage, or simply that they wouldn't be regulated but authorized? So I think it was a reference to the presentation we did on the security tokens part, where Faustine, you presented the fact that there were blockers in France for security tokens. And I think the answer would be that some security token projects are not, you cannot deploy them in France, but then you cannot deploy them in any other countries of the EU, because the blockers are at the EU level. And that's the reason why France pushed for this pilot regime that was named, or that had another name in France, but that basically it. I don't know, Faustine, if you want to add something on this.
Just maybe giving some additional precisions. The legal analysis of our French financial regulators unveiled that on the primary market for security token, there is no real problems with the current regulation, but there are some issues that prevent from listing your security token, especially on trading platforms, and to have I would say a smooth post-market of security tokens. For the moment, for example, you can't use DLT. You need to be a CSD. This raises many issues, and so as Simon has just said, it is a European problem. So if you are French, if you target French or European clients that will be the same. So the goal of the pilot regime, and we see it in the scope of this pilot regime, is to raise those issues on the secondary market and the post market of security tokens.
Thank you, Faustine. Maybe another question. We have become extra vigilant to how we educate each other and exchange information. How is this being addressed in France? How much education is being done towards financial literacy, crypto ecosystem? Who promotes and financially supports it? And is it already part of traditional educational systems or mainly outsourced by domain experts? So that's a very broad question. Yes, the education part is crucial, and I think there's two aspects to it. There's the technical expertise on the protocols, and that's something that has been, I think, very well handled in France. There's a lot of trainings as engineers focused on the blockchain technology. I would say where it is lacking is on the financial side and maybe on the broad crypto assets apprehension, where there's probably not a lot of lessons that are adapted in the traditional educational system. So it's basically on our shoulders to do this work. That's something that we have begun like a few months ago, but of course it's an ongoing process and there's a lot of work to do. Of course, we're not alone in this, and we will, of course, leverage with all the works that has been already performed by all the other associations and groups in the crypto assets industry. So that's for this question. Maybe one or two last questions. Is France looking towards holding crypto asset as part of obligatory foreign currency? Or is it otherwise invested into this? So I'm not sure I understand the question, but crypto assets are not considered as a currency. So just to clarify, in France, it's a very specific regime and they are defined as crypto assets. And so there's specific rules regarding the holding and the sales and everything of crypto assets. Great. I think that's pretty much it. Maybe in the chat, there's a few additional questions. I'll just have a very quick look on this. So there's an information. There's a master that trains in crypto and finance in Paris One University, Sorbonne, Master FTD. So if you want to learn more about crypto, please join this master. And then, yeah, I think those are more observation than questions. Great. I think that's it. Let's finish this presentation now. Thank you very much all for your participation and your attention. And feel free to contact us directly on the website or in our email. And thank you again. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.